Join us for the heart-pounding second episode of our series, The Smiling Man. When a night stroll turns into a living nightmare, you won't believe your eyes as we reveal the shocking footage of the sinister Smiling Man. Watch as our brave protagonist confronts this malevolent entity, leading to an unforgettable showdown with fear itself. With eerie disappearances and creepy urban legends, this tale will leave you screaming for more. Don't miss out on this haunting adventure. Subscribe now for more hair-raising content and share this spine-chilling video with your friends. But beware, the Smiling Man may be lurking in the shadows, waiting to haunt your dreams. About 5 years ago, I lived downtown in a major city in the US. I've always been a night person, so I would often find myself bored after my roommate, who was decidedly not a night person, went to sleep. To pass the time, I used to go for long walks and spend the time thinking. I spent 4 years like that, walking alone at night, and never once had a reason to feel afraid. I always used to joke with my roommate that even the drug dealers in the city were polite. But all of that changed in just a few minutes of one eerie evening. It was a Wednesday, somewhere between 1 and 2 in the morning, and I was walking near a police-patrolled park quite a ways from my apartment. It was a quiet night, even for a weeknight, with very little traffic and almost no one on foot. The park, as it was most nights, was completely empty. I turned down a short side street in order to loop back to my apartment when I first noticed him. At the far end of the street, on my side, was the silhouette of a man dancing. It was a strange dance, similar to a waltz, but he finished each box with an odd forward stride. I guess you could say he was dance-walking, headed straight for me. Deciding he was probably drunk, I stepped as close as I could to the road to give him the majority of the sidewalk to pass me by. The closer he got, the more I realized how gracefully he was moving. He was very tall and lanky, and wearing an old suit. He danced closer still, until I could make out his face. His eyes were open wide and wild, head tilted back slightly, looking off at the sky. His mouth was formed in a painfully wide cartoon of a smile. Between the eyes and the smile, I decided to cross the street before he danced any closer. I took my eyes off of him to cross the empty street. As I reached the other side, I glanced back, and then stopped dead in my tracks. He had stopped dancing and was standing with one foot in the street, perfectly parallel to me. He was facing me but still looking skyward, smile still wide on his lips. I was completely and utterly unnerved by this. I started walking again, but kept my eyes on the man. He didn't move. Once I had put about half a block between us, I turned away from him for a moment to watch the sidewalk in front of me. The street and sidewalk ahead of me were completely empty. Still unnerved, I looked back to where he had been standing to find him gone. For the briefest of moments, I felt relieved until I noticed him. He had crossed the street and was now slightly crouched down. I couldn't tell for sure due to the distance and the shadows, but I was certain he was facing me. I had looked away from him for no more than 10 seconds, so it was clear that he had moved fast. I was so shocked that I stood there for some time, staring at him. And then he started moving toward me again. He took giant, exaggerated tiptoed steps, as if he were a cartoon character sneaking up on someone. Except he was moving very, very quickly. I'd like to say at this point I ran away or pulled out my pepper spray or my cell phone or anything at all, but I didn't. I just stood there, completely frozen as the Smiling Man crept toward me. And then he stopped again, about a car length away from me. Still smiling his smile, still looking to the sky. When I finally found my voice, I blurted out the first thing that came to mind. What I meant to ask was, "What do you want?" in an angry, commanding tone. What came out was a whimper. What? Regardless of whether or not humans can smell fear, they can certainly hear it. I heard it in my own voice, and that only made me more afraid. But he didn't react to it at all. He just stood there, smiling. And then, after what felt like forever, he turned around, very slowly, and started dance-walking away. Just like that. Not wanting to turn my back to him again, I just watched him go until he was far enough away to almost be out of sight. And then I realized something. He wasn't moving away anymore, nor was he dancing. I watched in horror as the distant shape of him grew larger and larger. He was coming back my way. And this time he was running. I ran too. I ran until I was off of the side road and back onto a better lit road with sparse traffic. Looking behind me then, he was nowhere to be found. The rest of the way home, I kept glancing over my shoulder, always expecting to see his stupid smile, but he was never there. I lived in that city for 6 months after that night, and I never went out for another walk. There was something about his face that always haunted me. He didn't look drunk, he didn't look high. He looked completely and utterly insane. And that's a very, very scary thing to see. Months passed, and the memory of the smiling man began to fade. I did my best to forget about that night, convincing myself it was just a bizarre and random encounter with a disturbed individual. Life went on, and I tried to regain my sense of security in the city I once loved. But as the years rolled by, that sense of unease never truly left me. The mere thought of venturing out at night sent shivers down my spine. I became a recluse, avoiding any opportunity that would force me to face the darkness that had claimed my peace of mind. Every creak, every shadow, and every distant laughter would trigger memories of that nightmarish encounter. One day, while flipping through a local newspaper, I stumbled upon a chilling article. A series of unexplained disappearances had plagued the city over the past few years. The victims were all young men, and their disappearances bore an eerie resemblance to the night I encountered the smiling man. As I read on, my heart raced with terror. There, among the haunting details, was a description that sent a chill down my spine: the smiling man. The article spoke of an urban legend that had been whispered among those who dared to venture into the city's dark alleys. They called him the grinning stalker, an enigmatic figure who appeared only at night, stalking his victims with a sinister smile that would forever haunt their nightmares. People claimed he could vanish into thin air, eluding capture even as he hunted his prey with an unnatural grace. Some said he was a vengeful spirit, seeking retribution for some long-forgotten injustice. Others believed he was a malevolent entity, a harbinger of doom that fed off fear and despair. The more I read, the more convinced I became that the smiling man I had encountered that night was the very same creature that haunted the city's darkest corners. It was a revelation that filled me with dread, for I knew I had not escaped his clutches that night. He had merely toyed with me, leaving me to live in perpetual fear. Haunted by the truth, I became obsessed with unraveling the mystery behind the grinning stalker. I scoured old archives, questioned locals, and sought out those who had experienced encounters with this malevolent force. But the more I delved into the darkness, the deeper it seemed to consume me. Each night, I found myself plagued by haunting dreams. I would see the smiling man's face in every shadow, his maniacal laughter echoing in my ears. Sleep became my enemy, and I began to question my own sanity. As the years passed, my appearance became haggard, and my once vibrant eyes were now hollow and tormented. I had become a mere shell of the person I once was, a victim of my own obsession with the grinning stalker. One fateful night, unable to bear the torment any longer, I made a decision that would seal my fate. Armed with determination and a desperate desire for closure, I set out to confront the grinning stalker once and for all. Guided by an inexplicable force, I retraced my steps to the very spot where I had encountered him years ago. The night was eerily silent, as if the city itself held its breath, anticipating the confrontation that was about to unfold. As I stood there, the air grew colder, and a foreboding darkness enveloped me. And then, there he was, emerging from the shadows with the grace of a malevolent specter. His eyes, wide and deranged, locked onto mine, and the cartoonish grin stretched across his face sent shivers down my spine. "You should have never come back," he whispered, his voice a haunting echo that reverberated through the night. Summoning every ounce of courage I had left, I mustered a shaky response. "Who are you? What do you want from me?" He chuckled, a sound that seemed to echo from the depths of hell. "I am the darkness that lurks in the hearts of men, the fear that consumes their souls. You let fear control you, and now you belong to me." His words struck a chord deep within me, and I realized the truth behind his malevolence. He fed off fear, and I had unwittingly become his prey. But in that moment, I made a choice. I would not be consumed by fear any longer. With a newfound determination, I took a step forward, refusing to cower before this creature of darkness. "I won't let you haunt me any longer. You have no power over me." The grinning stalker's smile wavered for a moment, and a glimmer of uncertainty flickered in his eyes. But then he lunged at me with inhuman speed, his hand outstretched to ensnare me in his clutches. However, this time I was ready. I sidestepped his attack, and in one swift motion, I pulled out a small vial filled with a peculiar liquid I had prepared in secret. I hurled the vial toward him, and it shattered upon impact, releasing a blinding light that engulfed him. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. As the light consumed him, he let out a guttural scream, a sound that pierced through the night like a banshee's wail. And then, he was gone, vanishing into the void from which he had emerged. I had defeated the grinning stalker, but the price was steep. The encounter left me broken, my mind shattered by the horrors I had witnessed. From that night on, I was forever changed, haunted not only by the memories of the smiling man, but also by the darkness within myself that I had faced that night. To this day, I am known as the one who confronted the grinning stalker and lived to tell the tale. But the truth is, I did not truly survive that night. I am forever trapped in the torment of that encounter, forever haunted by the face of the smiling man and the darkness that lurks in the corners of my mind. And so, I warn you, dear reader, to beware the darkness that lies within and the malevolent entities that may lurk in the shadows, for they are more real than you could ever imagine.